Namaste. Welcome to the show, The Voice Beyond the Boundary. I'm your host, Milan Casey. Look outside your window. Listen. Beyond the noise of our cities and the rhythm of our daily lives, there is another world breathing, a world of forests that remembers, rivers that speak, and lakes that holds entire universe in their stillness. Yet, the world is whispering to us now, not just in birdsong, but in urgency, in the split filling our lakes, in the shrinking spaces of wildlife, in the delicate balance between what we take and what we must protect. But where do we begin? How do we move from concern to action, from loving our land to actively healing it? Tonight, on The Voice Beyond the Boundary, we are joined by the man who has spent his life listening to those whispers across the continent, from the stormy shores of Alaska to the serene waters of Pokhara, a scientist, a storyteller, and a quiet guardian of a wild. Please join me in welcoming a true voice for our planet, the respected wildlife biologist, Dr. Vernon BYRD. Dr. BYRD, welcome to the show.
Thank you, sir.
Dr. BYRD, you've worked as a fish and wildlife conservation biologist in Alaska, and you've also part of University of Nations in Hawaii. And what brings you here in Nepal?
Well, I visited Nepal on vacation back in 2014.
Okay.
And I just fell in love with the place. People are amazing. It's one place on the planet that an Alaskan can get a mountain upgrade. These are the real ones. But I saw opportunity to learn about the environment here, which is my passion.
True.
And had an opportunity then to visit some amazing places and see amazing wildlife. And so I kept coming back.
Have you gone the trekkings route and the Everest route and the other places?
I haven't been to Everest Base Camp, but I've been on treks in both the mid-hills and then in Jumla.
Jumla? Okay.
And so they're wonderful.
True. Dr. BYRD, and you also did your PhD here in Kathmandu University, right?
I did, and that my interest is broader than just wildlife. It's in sustainability and environmental protection. And I learned about a technology called aquaponics.
Aquaponics, okay.
It is a combination of aquaculture and hydroponics.
Okay.
And so fish and plants are grown in the same system.
Okay.
And it's very environmentally friendly because it recirculates the water and therefore doesn't use nearly as much water as irrigation in the soil. And there's no discharge to the environment.
Okay.
So it's a very environmentally friendly system. And I wanted to I started working on it at our university in Hawaii.
In Hawaii, right?
And I wanted to see if it had application here because I had recognized that in the cities, particularly like Kathmandu, the agricultural land was disappearing very quickly.
True.
Even kitchen garden space sometimes was becoming limited.
And the lands are very expensive as well, right?
Yes, and so I went out to Kathmandu University and I met Dr. Bibhuti Jha, who was department head there in environmental science, because I wanted to know if it had any application in Nepal.
Okay.
And he was very excited about the possibility. He's a fish scientist, and he recognized that it might have some potential for food security in the city.
Okay.
And so we collaborated, and I did research there through his lab at Kathmandu University on that technology.
On hydroponics, right?
Yeah, on hydroponics and aquaponics, with and without fish.
Okay.
Hydroponics is where you introduce chemicals into the water, the nutrients for the plants. And aquaponics is where you feed the fish, and then the fish waste produces the nutrients for the plants.
So literally you don't need a soil for the plants.
You don't need soil, and that's another advantage to rooftop growing because many landlords don't want soil on their roof. It might cause a leak. And so this is an opportunity, potentially, that can really help people living in the city grow some of their own food.
Is it a sustainable technology for Nepal or Nepali family?
That's what I was looking at. I had a graduate student working with me, a master's student, And we traveled all over on the back of his motorcycle,
Motorcycle.
trying to visit people who were doing this.
All over Kathmandu Valley, right?
And elsewhere in Nepal.
Okay.
And we found quite a few systems, a lot of family systems and a few commercial systems. And we interviewed everyone. People were so willing and excited to talk to us because many of them didn't really know anybody else was doing this.
Okay.
And
were they guided by somebody, or they were just following the YouTube videos?
Yeah,
or?
most of them learned on YouTube.
Okay.
A few of them had taken online courses. And so we measured everything they were doing. We interviewed them, and we put all of that together to understand what the Nepali context looked like for this technology. And we concluded that in the city it does have application and can be quite sustainable, particularly at the family scale.
Okay.
But there are also some viable commercial systems in Nepal right now that are doing well.
Okay. So there are commercial aquaponics farmers in Nepal?
The bigger farms, yes, there are.
There are. And they're supplying it to the market as well?
Mostly growing leafy greens, like lettuce, or maybe strawberries they may be growing, or other leafy greens like bok choy, and mostly, and some basil, other herbs, mostly for the either farmers market or commercial restaurants.
Okay. Dr. Bird, what about the nutrition content? Because all the plants get their nutrition from the soil, right? But they are getting it from the water.
Yeah.
So are those as healthy as the one grown on the soil?
That is a very good question, and that has been the biggest question, particularly for hydroponics from the beginning. And we did research, but others have done a lot more research. And actually you can tailor the nutrients to the plant easier in hydroponics because you put in just what that species needs. So soil is an anchor for plants, and they do get the nutrients from the soil. But if you provide the nutrients in the water, it works just as well. So the nutrient density in the leaves can be as good as or higher than it would be from the soil.
Okay. So there is a potential for it to turn this technology as a cash crop producer, right?
Yes. It has to be a market where people will pay a premium, like a restaurant.
Okay.
At this point, because of the upfront cost, it doesn't make sense if you tried to sell wholesale, typically. But for family, it works very well because they use their own produce. And they know it's good quality, they know it has no chemicals.
And they can do it on their rooftop, right?
Absolutely. Our side yard, that's the other benefit. It can grow very close together because the roots are constantly being fertilized. So you could put lettuce plants side by side, whereas in the soil they would have to be spread maybe twice as far apart. So that really makes sense in a greenhouse where you're trying to optimize the use of space.
And what kind of training do you need to practice aquaponics or hydroponics for an average Nepali family?
There's so much available online now because it's become quite popular in the West that it would be quite easy for someone to find enough information to be able to build a small unit and operate
by themselves.
Yes, using plastic drums, cut them in two, and that's 2 grow beds for plants, and use one for the fish tank or the nutrient.
It's that simple, right?
It can be that simple.
Okay. Wow. So what was your research finding on your PhD, Dr. Bird?
First of all, that people were already doing it.
In Nepal?
Nepal, and that they had figured it out, and they had expressed it in a way that made sense here. They used materials they could find here. They used pumps that they could buy here. And they figured out which crops worked the best here. And then, but I asked everyone, what's the biggest problem? And by far the majority that was identified was the high cost of commercial fish food. So I did research on that and found out that commercial chicken food grew plants and fish just as well, and it cost 20 to 50% as much as the commercial fish food. So I think it is quite viable for a family. Now, if you have great soil and a kitchen garden, you don't need it. But if you don't have access to that, or you have very limited water, remember that this is recirculated, so it doesn't use nearly as much water as irrigation.
It's just circulating the same water
Pump puts it
again
up in,
and again.
Yep, use it over and over.
Okay. And what about the fish in aquaponics? Can you have about any type of fish? Are there particular fish that
in the world you can have almost any? You can have a lot of different kinds, but fish are cold-blooded, so they assume the temperature of the water.
Okay.
And there are warm-blooded, there are warm water fish and cold water fish, and there are some that can do both.
Both. Okay.
So tilapia is a popular one around the world, and on the Terai it works very well, but it can't stand very cold temperatures.
Okay.
So as you get further higher, then tilapia don't work, but rainbow trout work great.
Okay, okay.
And
wouldn't that be nice to have rainbow trout and some lettuce growing in the, in the
people do
rooftop?
That. People do that.
Wow.
But common carp work in both places. They can handle warm and cold.
Common carp is pretty stable fish here in Nepal, isn't it?
It is.
Okay. Okay. Dr. Bird, I would also want to go to another research that you've done here in Pokhara about birds in Maidi Lake. Can you elaborate on your research on Maidi Lake?
Sure. The Pokhara Valley has 9 lakes which are recognized internationally for their importance. They're designated as a Ramsar site.
Okay.
And Ramsar is a convention that was signed in
Iran?
Ramsar, Iran. And it designates these lakes that have international importance, as I said, and Pokhara Valley is one of those sites.
Okay.
And so I was interested in wetland. I've studied wetland birds in the past.
In Alaska, right?
And in Hawaii as well.
Okay.
And so I was interested in that research, and there were students at the forestry college who were interested, and so I've been volunteering there to help students with their thesis projects. And so one of the students wanted to do the study to evaluate the habitat use by birds, because when you're interested in conservation of a wetland particularly, it's important to know which habitats are the most important for which birds.
Okay.
Because management affects habitats.
True.
Sometimes directly the birds, but mostly it's the habitats.
Okay.
And so we did 2 studies. We did one that evaluated the relationship of each individual species of bird to which habitats they were using at Mighty Lake.
Okay.
And another one, we recorded every species that used Mighty Lake over about a 1.5-year period.
Okay.
And
so it was a pretty long study, right?
And we published 2 papers.
Okay.
On those 2 studies, but they are meant to be baseline data to be used in conservation planning by the Lake Conservation Committee, and also to be baseline data to compare change over time. And that's what's really been lacking to a large degree sometimes in Nepal. But it's not unusual. When I first worked in Alaska, 1968 is when I went to Alaska. Nobody around here is that old, but
basically, I was not even born, Dr. Bird.
You didn't have to say that.
Yes.
But basically, we were about in the same stage, or we weren't even as far along in bird study in Alaska at that time as you are in Nepal. But I understand how it can change and how early stages can be important. And that's where we are here. So our studies at Mighty Lake are meant to be examples of how wetlands could be evaluated from the standpoint of birds. And why birds? Because there's so many species, they sample all the habitats. You've heard the term miner's canary?
Yes.
Miners used to take canaries down in the mine to see if the air was good.
True.
Well, birds signal the quality and the health of the environment. And so that's why they are a particularly good group to evaluate when you're looking at these kinds of things. And we wanted to see what the effects might be of the different activities that are happening around the lakes and the changes in the habitats.
Okay. Dr. Bird, Pokhara is a city of 9 lakes, right?
9 lakes.
9 lakes, right? And Pokhara city is urbanizing in a rapid pace. And there's a lot of concern about pollutions and climate change. And I'm pretty sure you've been to all these lakes. What is your perspective on these lakes? What are we doing to our lakes?
Well, we're in some cases loving them to death.
Loving them to death, right?
Not really. It's not that far. these lakes have importance for their ecosystem services.
True.
Not just for the birds, but for the people that use them as well, and for the plants, and for the other organisms that live there. It's a shared resource. In some case, and a reason I use the term love to death, because we've done that sometimes in the West, where we had a beautiful place, and people really wanted to come and see it, but then there were so many people coming and so much infrastructure that it kind of robbed it of why they were coming.
True.
And so that's what we would have called loving it to
Loving
death.
to death, right.
But I would say Faywa would be the one that's the most complex. Of course, it has Lakeside there, which is wonderful.
True.
It's probably is it the highest tourist destination in Nepal?
I think so.
And so many people from all over the world come, and
Yeah.
they fall in love with Nepal because they're there. They go do a trek, or they just stay at the lake, and that's super important. That's very important. But there's also a pretty large wetland there that is a very important habitat for migratory birds, for example. It also is a landing place for people that jump off Serengeti.
Paragliding, right? Yes, yes.
And so there's multiple uses, what we call it.
Okay.
I think it's really important to sort of have enough data to understand how those could possibly work together. Or at least understand what the negative impact will be of something and make an informed decision about whether or not to do that activity. And I think it's as I understand it, it'd be the municipality of Pokhara City that would be the authority that would have the day-to-day management of that area.
They are, in fact, they are.
But because these are Ramsar sites, everyone has a management plan, a conservation plan, and so very much there's an intent to try to conserve as much of the resources as possible while accommodating human uses. But careful planning, informed by data, is probably a key to doing it as well as it can be done. Pollution is an issue. There's the water quality has suffered. There have been several very good studies of that. It's clear that there are pollutants in the lake from runoff, agricultural runoff, as well as industrial pollution. But also,
and I'm pretty sure they affect the living creatures of the lakes, right?
It's bound to at some point. Water quality, just like water quality in Nepal in general, for Badeshis, I can't drink that water out of the river. True. It's polluted from my standpoint. Now, someone who lives there may have accommodated that.
Adaptation, right?
But organisms are always affected by pollution. The extent to which that happens and how disastrous it is will vary, depending on the amount of pollution and which species we're talking about. But there's no question that water and air quality are two very important things, and both have some challenges in Nepal.
True.
And that water is used for irrigation, for all the paddies and for other areas. And so if there's harmful chemicals in the water, even microplastics or something that we may find out as unintended consequences, then that's going to affect the agriculture as well. And certainly people are using that water. The fishers, particularly the indigenous people that have lived around that lake forever, their livelihood is dependent on it. So, there's an encroachment. People are filling in around the edge to build another hotel. And you understand why that would be important to them. But good planning with good information about the impacts to the environment of projects would be very helpful moving forward.
Dr. Bird, in your career as a conservative biologist, you must have traveled all around the world and seen many cities with lakes, right? Can you, what can we do to protect our lakes so that nature can have its way and we can have our way as well, right? This is the equilibrium, right? The balance.
Well, that's what probably everyone would want to see, right? Yeah. Because the people that live, let's just take the Pokhara. Well, I'll address your first question first. There are good examples of lakes in urban areas that have been restored typically so that they provide high quality ecosystem services, including ecotourism and water for people that live nearby. But once a lake is depleted or the quality is declined, it's an expensive thing to try to restore it.
Bring back to its original position.
But you still have good opportunities here because Nepal is in a lot better shape than we are in the West. We modified habitats in the West in ways we can't restore them now, and most of them.
So it's changed forever, right?
Yeah,
It's changed
yeah,
forever.
absolutely.
But that's not the case here in Nepal.
You still have many opportunities. You're actually increasing the amount of forest here every year or over time.
Okay.
Nepal is doing a really nice job of some of these things. Community forests are world examples, some of the best ones of how people can really manage their own resource and make it work the way you said. So lakes could be the same. There are lake conservation committees, at least in all these areas. None of them are protected by law. They're all on, none of them are in protected areas. So it's up to the community. So if people had good information about the impacts of different uses and could mitigate the negative impacts. Maybe you don't put water buffalo on at a certain time of the season if nesting birds are drastically affected, or maybe you do. Maybe it's too important and you do it anyway. But at least you have information to make those decisions. And if there's lake conservation committees, which for the most part really care about their area, that's why they're doing that. If they have good information and can make informed decisions, that's probably your best way that you're going to be able to have multiple use of those lakes and preserve their ecosystem services, including for the wildlife.
Because I want my kids and my grandkids to enjoy the lake as we're doing now, right?
Absolutely. A long-term view is so important for something like that, because it does take time to degrade it usually, but although that can happen a lot faster than restoration.
True.
Better not to do it in the first place if you know you're going to have to restore it.
And you have also dealt with aquaponics and hydroponics and lakes, right? And we cannot stop urbanization and modernization, and we cannot minimize transport as it is, right? So we have to accept as it is. So how can urbanization and nature coexist together? Not just the lake, but now I'm talking about Pokhara Valley, Kathmandu Valley, and we have a lot of valleys and cities. How can nature coexist together with the cities?
Well, that question is being asked all over the world, and there are some great examples of where cities have planned natural areas within the city, and those Central Park, New York, would be an example. I mean, they are so important to the city, but they have to be thought about before they're gone.
Okay.
And so city planners can, if that is an objective, then it needs to be addressed early on. Okay. So that may be one of the possible problems in Kathmandu. There may not have been the capacity to really plan effectively. A lot of the development may have been more or less unplanned.
That's why whenever we land from the airplane, all we see is our concrete buildings. And I don't see even a single tree is there.
and arguably the Bagmati River doesn't have high water quality.
Oh yeah.
But no one person did anything wrong.
True.
People need a place to live. Urbanization happens because people want a better life. And no one wants to deny people to have a better life. But understanding how the impacts are and what really can happen long term needs to be addressed in the planning.
True. Dr. Bird, do rivers like Bagmati and other city rivers have chance to come back to its original habitat? Because you are a conservation biologist, right?
Yeah.
So do they have chance? Can we do something now? Because we can't dismantle all the houses and stuff. But what can we do to bring those rivers back to life?
You always have to stop the source of the pollution first. Cleaning it up or controlling it, an invasive species or pollution, is a never-ending expensive process.
Yep.
You first have to stop or at least reduce the source of the pollution or
to
the
river
contamination.
that's feeding the rivers, right?
Yeah. So that's the first thing. But it is possible to restore rivers. We have done that a lot in the West. When I was young and some of the rivers were, I grew up in the East Coast before I went to Alaska of the U.S. And paper companies who were making paper from trees, they just dumped the chemicals right into the
In
rivers.
the river, okay.
And it was a little bit like the Bagmati.
Okay.
But that's been stopped,
Mhm.
and those nature has an amazing capacity to restore itself if you give it the right circumstances. If
Okay.
you remove the source of pollution,
Mhm.
if you stop destroying habitat,
Mhm.
it has some innate capacity.
To come back to its original state, right?
And so
So,
if
Dr. Bird, we have chance, right?
there
Then-
is there is hope.
hope.
There is hope, but it's going to be expensive. It's going to take public buy-in. It always is. When I studied basic wildlife management in the 1960s,
Mhm.
first rule is people have to agree or it's not going to work.
Okay.
You can have a great idea.
Or whatever science says,
Exactly.
but people have to.
That's
agree,
right.
Dr. Bird, we are so much worried about our purity of our food. There's so much contamination on even the fresh vegetables or fruits that we eat. Insecticides, pesticides, herbicides, weedicides, all these kind of sides out there, and I'm pretty sure we are consuming it in large doses, right? How will they affect the environment? Because eventually the waste products are going back to the environment, right?
No question.
How will it impact the ecosystem?
One big example in Nepal, but it's absolutely not confined to Nepal.
Mhm.
Most countries that use a lot of pesticides, insects will be the first to go.
Insects.
Insects,
Okay.
because they're so sensitive
Okay.
to the chemical. And so then there can be secondary poisoning because a bird eats the insect that ate the
Okay.
chemical.
Uh-huh.
So a good example in the world would be a DDT. You know what that is?
Yep.
It's actually responsible for people living on the Terai right now, because that's what controlled malaria,
True.
so that
true.
people other than Theru people could live there.
Okay.
But
It was extensively used in Nepal, right?
for mosquito control,
mosquito control. Yeah.
so that malaria could be controlled.
control.
So, but DDT
Mhm.
was picked up in the environment, in the water, in the soils, and the insects to the birds, and that was responsible for massive poisoning of birds in North America. And so a woman named Rachel Carson wrote a book called Silent Spring.
Okay.
And that started the revolution
Mhm.
of trying to, or recognizing, first of all, people weren't doing this on purpose, they
Okay.
just didn't know about it. That's an
Mhm.
unintended
Yeah,
consequence.
yeah.
And so that's,
They were just focused on mosquito or whatever, right?
yeah,
Just the-
because that was a
okay.
big problem.
Uh-huh.
But that's what started. So you're right. We're only now learning, I think, more and more about how human health is impacted by pesticides. But if you think about it, if a pesticide will kill a pest, how can that be good for a human?
Exactly. It's a poison after all.
It's a
right?
poison.
And it's poisoning the living system, whether it's insect or human, right?
But on the other hand, it can be argued that if you don't use that, you can't grow the crops that feed humans. So
Okay.
it's not as simple. It's not as straightforward. But I think we're learning that there are chemicals that can, and natural ways to control insects or pest insects that don't contaminate the food. And that's a whole study area going on right now. It's also being learned if you have healthy soils that plants themselves are much more resistant to pests.
Okay.
That's a really
Because they have
solid
to survive,
evidence.
right? They
Yeah.
have to be resilient. Okay.
And so restoring soils,
Mhm.
healthy soils, and then using insect control that is less heavy on negative pesticides is what we have to do. I think that's becoming aware, people are becoming way more aware of that, in Nepal as well as in the West, that we are being made sick by our food sometimes. And so that's another reason why growing your own and not using pesticides, you know the quality of the food. When you
Okay.
buy it in the store, you don't know even where it came from.
True.
And you don't know how much pesticide was used and how much it might affect you. I think there's a worldwide move to think about this. And I believe in the future we're going to see effective methods of dealing with pests that won't negatively affect us as much.
I was reading a poem by this little girl in internet and of Pokhara Valley, and she wrote this interesting poem I think it was just her feeling, but she wrote that the poem had this line says that the fireflies of Pokhara are disappearing. She don't see the firefly anymore like she used to see years ago. And this I don't know how old she is, maybe 17, 18, I don't know, right? But the lines were so powerful. Do you think these kind of pesticides has roles on this firefly disappearing and honeybees disappearing?
Oh, bees are a big problem because they are, if you don't have them, then you basically aren't going to get pollination. Not just bees pollinate, but they're a big group of pollinators.
And no fruits, right? And no fruits, no vegetable without pollination, right?
The whole thing is connected.
Wow.
So, yes, pesticides will often kill beneficial insects. I think they all have a purpose, but we would refer to bees as pollinators as very beneficial. And so, absolutely, and the fireflies would be very sensitive.
I was amazed to read that poem, and I just connected to the science, and like she was referring that I couldn't see the fireflies anymore, and just in my mind I was thinking, what could be the reason? And maybe it was, maybe lights.
I don't know for sure, but I would guess that entirely would be a possibility.
True. But we need to bring back the fireflies, right?
I think you're starting a campaign here.
Bring back the fireflies in Pokhara Valley.
It's got a nice ring to it. Good T-shirt there.
True. Dr. Bird, I would like to go back to your younger days. What made you come to conservation biology?
My grandmother was what we used to call a naturopath.
Okay.
She knew about herbs that would heal you, and she loved being in the woods. And she pointed out to me different plants, sassafras root, this and that. I would follow her around in the woods. And she would point out insects, and I just became very interested in the natural world. And when I found out that you could study it and do it for a living, there was just no possibility I was doing anything else. So that's how it started. But I have loved nature and loved studying and trying to understand nature since I was a little boy.
Okay. You're very curious about nature.
Very curious. Yeah. Curiosity is a gift. True. People that don't have curiosity, I feel like, missed out.
True. And could you tell me about your experience as a U.S. fish and wildlife biologist? What are the kind of work, what was your daily work like? I'm pretty sure they were not the regular days, but like what was the average day?
Right. Well, my whole career was working in protected areas. In the U.S.
All over Alaska or all over America?
All over Alaska and also in Hawaii.
In Hawaii.
And they are called National Wildlife Refuges. They're public land set aside for wildlife. And so I first went...
Just like the sanctuaries we have in Nepal?
Yeah.
Like Chitwan National Park,
Koshi, Koshi would be an example, or Chitwan. They're like national parks, except they're specifically for wildlife. Because we also have national parks, which would be something like the Annapurna Conservation Area, beautiful place, but not specifically for wildlife.
So when you say wildlife, we cannot go and visit?
No, you absolutely can.
Oh, we can.
You can, but the full focus is on wildlife populations being restored if necessary, and protected if they're good population. And usually all those areas were created because they had high wildlife value. So the wildlife is the first priority, but people are invited. In fact, you want people to come, and they come in high numbers to see these big concentrations of wildlife. So ecotourism is a huge draw to these refuges. So I worked on those, and my role was, I was in management for a while, but mainly I was a research biologist. And so the refuges that I worked on in Alaska were either ducks and geese, like waterfowl, or they were...
wild ducks, right?
This was wild, oh yeah. The one refuge I worked on is one of the major nesting areas for several species of geese and ducks. And so I worked on those. I studied, do you know what, you don't have an ocean, but I studied seabirds, birds that spend most of
I know what seagulls are, and the one with
gulls are an example, but these are birds that spend most of their life at sea but come to land to nest. And so one of the refuges that I worked on was one of the premier seabird nesting areas in the world. And so At the time I started, we didn't know very much about them, so I had the incredible privilege of being able to discover things about these species, ultimately to learn how to maintain, how to preserve them, how to restore those. I worked on an endangered goose that was almost extinct, and we were able to bring that back to high population levels. So my general approach was to plan studies, go and do them. It was remote, so we would go to a field camp somewhere on a remote island, for instance, for 4 months.
For 4 months?
Boat would come by once a month to deliver
Food,
supplies.
waters,
Yep, you take what you need, and we study wildlife. Then we come back, we analyze data, we write reports, we engage with planning agencies, we give our information. That comes together with other information for conservation planning.
But most of the time you work in isolation, right?
Yeah.
Because it's
often
pretty
the field,
remote, isn't it?
Because Alaska is
It's
remote.
remote, right?
Now in Hawaii, I worked on small national wildlife refuges surrounded by communities.
Okay.
But they were all endangered species refuges. So I learned about them, and once we learned about them, we actually built refuges for them. We built wetlands with islands that different species needed for nesting, and things like that.
Dr. Bird, you've worked in those protected area national park, and U.S. has pretty strong, strict laws and ordinance and all. And you have also visited parks in Nepal. Do you see any similarities, or do you have more work to do, or are we doing it better, or what is the condition?
You have some very well written laws and policies.
We're good at it at every level, writing the policies.
Absolutely. I've read your Environmental Protection Act. I looked at your biodiversity strategies, Environmental Protection Act. They're all extremely well written. Very good strategies. I think it's been difficult to implement for lack of resources, both personnel and funding. And it takes both those. But I feel like there's nothing wrong with the laws and policies. I think if it were possible to fully implement them, for instance, the Environmental Protection Act requires an environmental assessment, that is to go and look at a place to see what the impacts of a project will be on the environment. But if to do that well requires funding. You need to put people on the ground usually and evaluate it, and then write reports on that, and then factor that in to the decision about how to implement the project. And
just good policy will not work. You'd have to have.
Well, you got to implement it.
Implement it, right?
Yeah, but you need the policy, because if you don't have that,
that's like a guideline.
Yeah, it is. And so if that were possible, so in the West, what we did was we made the cost of the project include the environmental assessment. So if the government was doing a project, or say a business was doing a project, you would add a fairly small percent usually of a big project, and that would fund the environmental assessment.
Which we don't do it here, right?
I don't really know how. I don't know that. I just know that you have the capacity, you have the legislation and the policy backing to do just the kind of thing we're talking about, is to really study and try to understand the impact of a project, and then implement the project. Maybe you don't change it, but maybe you can. Maybe there's some options to do it in a different way and have less negative impact. True. So I think you have what you have in place in terms of policy is fine. You have some great examples. The community forest, I think, are worldwide known. Now it's
and that's all over Nepal. Community forest.
Yeah, there's several categories of forest, and community forest being one of them. But and of course, there's really variation in how they're managed in different parts of Nepal. But the ones that are doing well are really good examples of how the community can use it, but yet preserve it, thinking for your grandkids it'll still be there.
True. Dr. Bird, and you have also worked in KU is one of our finest university.
I would agree.
TU, Tribhuvan University, the biggest one, but I think the finest one is KU. I might be wrong. How do you see the research being done in KU? Like you have been to universities in America. You are leading you're a department head in University of the Nation in Hawaii. How do you see the comparison between universities here in Nepal and in the States?
That's a good question, and I lived down in Jwalakil when I was going out to Dulikil, so I rode the bus every morning, and I talked to students every day, going, coming, and they asked me that question so many times.
Oh yeah.
And I'll tell you the truth, I don't see any university that I've been to, and I've been to 5, I think, that's any better than Kathmandu University.
Okay.
And I think in some ways, the interaction of the professors with the students was as good as I've seen anywhere. The professors in the aquatic ecology lab where I was spent all kinds of times with students, helping them hands-on, caring about them. It was a great environment. The quality of research was outstanding, first rate. They did cut no corners. There was no, there was nothing that would cause that to be second rate. And a student will ask me, we're all trying to go to the U.S. Why did you come here?
I'm pretty sure you get that question very often.
But I give KU a very high rating, in my opinion, of the universities I've been to, and largely because of that really caring and interaction with the students. In the West, lots of times the professors are more engaged in their research, and they teach too, but there's not as much interaction.
Okay.
Boy, it's great there.
Wow. I think we've almost at the end of ours, so it was great talking to you, Dr. Bird. One last message you want to give to your students and our viewers here in protecting our environment, or whatever you wish to. Can you share that with us here?
Yeah, as I mentioned before, you still have many options in Nepal. You really do. You have done some really good work in terms of policy. There's some real good examples of community forest and even lake conservation committee work. I think for the students can contribute a lot to knowledge base, which is often lacking. In big parts of Nepal, we don't know much about what's there and when it's there or how many are there, and that's the basis for conservation planning, is know what is where and when. And so I think, but citizens can contribute to that. For birds particularly, there's an online service called eBird, and citizens can contribute to that, and that starts to fill in the gaps with...
It's called eBird?
The small e and then the word bird.
eBird, okay. Just like email, right?
Just
eBird.
like email, it's eBird.
Okay.
And people that go and see birds can record what they see on there, and it begins to build these distribution maps of which species occur where, and where they're common and where they're uncommon, and that's the basis for conservation planning. Because birds sample all of the environment, they're probably particularly good indicators. So I would say citizens that are interested could really contribute in a very important way to the knowledge base about wildlife in Nepal.
Wow. Dr. Bird, it was great talking to you. Thank you for your time. And I wish you good luck on all the research project that you're doing here in Nepal. And I want to invite you back again for another talk. So thank you so much. Our best wishes. We began today by listening to the whisper of our world and through Dr. Bird's insight. Those whispers have become a clear, compelling call, a call to see our lakes not just as water, but as life, to see our forests not just as resources, but as a relationship, to see conservation not as a burden, but as a legacy. He reminded us that every action counts, whether it's a young student noting a bird by a lake shore, a farmer adopting a new practice, or a policymaker choosing protection over short-term gain. We are all keepers of this balance. So as we leave here today, let's carry this question with us. What is the one boundary we are willing to cross for the world we wish to leave behind? Thank you, Dr. Bird, for guiding us closer to the answer. And thank you, our audience, for listening, for caring, and for being part of this essential conversation. This is Milan Casey for The Voice Beyond the Boundary. Until next time, stay curious, speak for those who cannot speak, and remember, the future of our natural world doesn't just happen, it's chosen and chosen by us. Bye-bye.